Here we go, here we go, here we go. This is a movie I waited and I waited and I waited to rewatch. It is The Sacrament, produced by Eli Roth, directed by our boy Ty West. Now, this rounds out our director blocks. First director block, Rob Zombie. Second director block, Panos Cosmatos. That's right, the boy that did Mandy. And now we got the boy that did House of the Devil. That was day 13 this year of the 31 Days of Dread. And our previous episode, day 22, was The Innkeepers. The Sacrament, according to Wikipedia, was billed as his first serious movie. This movie is serious. This movie is terrifying. This movie is horrific. And this story, what we see before us, is based on a real life incident. This movie spun my head. I've only seen it 2 times. Both times it spins my head. Can we hit that intro and discuss Ty West and Eli Roth's The Sacrament? Welcome back. I am Peter A. DeLuca, AKAPAD, AKAPAD, AKADaddy, or just some guy on your ear through the airwaves, through the miracle of modern technology that is obsessed, that loves discussing movies and pop culture with you, the listener. And look, big shout out, big thank you. Every single year that I do the 31 Days of Dread, it spikes. Now, here's the crazy thing. All my traffic, everything spikes. And it spikes when I fall behind and do multiple uploads throughout the day. And I don't know, analytically, it's hard for me to pinpoint how and why, because the AKAPAD Audio Audacity podcast, that's what you're listening to, it's available on so many platforms. But the one platform that is somewhat of a like focal point or barometer, I'll say, is iTunes, of course, the iTunes podcast player. If you have an iPhone, there's an iTunes or a podcast icon that's purple that brings you into like the iTunes podcast store. It's a little complicated, and there is, like, that is where I kind of get the least traction. I seem to be growing on any other network, and it's definitely linked to when I do 2 to 3 episode uploads a day. And I think it's somewhat with my length, because every year when I do 31 Days of Dread, I try and get a little bit better of like pretty much the story I tell. Every single one of these episodes, it's a story. It's a little bit of a documentation. Some of it's a brain dump, some of it's anecdotal, like stories to open things up. And sometimes it's just me telling you guys the struggles I go through. And this year, I already spoken about it. Hard drive mishap. I had one of the busiest weeks all year going into October. Starting in October. That may have ended today. Some of these IT projects I'm involved in, they can keep going and going. They slow down and they can ramp back up. So there's just been a lot. And if you fall behind, you just continue to fall behind. But the entire time I'm falling behind, I'm still watching horror movies. I'm adjusting the programming, taking movies in, taking movies out, rearranging the sequencing, because I feel like that's very important. This year with the pairings, I really wanted to have thoughtful, intelligent pairings. I just didn't want to put movies together. And before we get into The Sacrament, I've seen The Sacrament one other time. And it took me a little bit to see this movie again. Just for timing, different reasons. And I'm happy I did. I'm really happy I did, because this movie blew me away again. Now, this is the Ty West that I know, that I love, from House of the Devil, not the Innkeeper. The Innkeeper Ty West is almost, I just really feel like that's something he may have started when he was really young, maybe in school. and he had the resources to bring it to fruition. But The Innkeepers essentially is it's a 30-minute movie at best. There's not enough meat on the bone for that one. It's really hard to get engaged with the characters, even though the characters are like good. The actors portraying them are good. There's so many good elements in that movie. It just doesn't coagulate. It doesn't come together. But real quick, so let's go into the rest of the 31 Days of Dread. And look, hey, even this year we kind of skipped day 15, so we're gonna have a makeup episode. It's a mess. The 31 Days of Dread this year is a horror show of itself. Day 24 will be Chud. Day 25 will be Return of the Living Dead. Now, this is what I'm calling, right here we go, 80s environmental horror. I love it. Day 26 and day 27 is great flicks, same titles. The Prophecy, 1978. The Prophecy, 1998. And then I've been back and forth. I watched a lot of sequels this year. I wanted to do sequels. Like not two sequels, a movie, and then its sequel, its follow-up. I never seen Reanimator. Okay, that's a bucket list movie. So it's Reanimator and Bride of Reanimator. Now, day 30 and day 31, rounding everything out, is a thread that started last year. Now, the 31 Days of Dread in 2017, one of the last episodes, might have been day 29, was Universal's Dracula. And, that really blew me away. So the following year, I wanted to do a deeper dive into the black and white Universal movies. Kind of like the ones I started it off. So we did The Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, and the Egg, so on and so forth. I was very happy with that thread. And one of the other ideas that emerged out of that was almost like the 90s revival of these characters all outside Creature from the Black Lagoon. For some reason, Creature from the Black Lagoon gets updated in like schlock movies. It doesn't get updated by a major studio. So we have Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. We have Stephen Sommers with The Mummy. And I wanted to do Wolf with Jack Nicholson. And I wanted to do Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, to really round out kind of like the 90s Monster Squad. And then for day 15, I'm going to go to like a Twitter promise, because the producer and I, we follow each other. It's a movie called The Chair. It's available on Amazon Prime, and I recommend everyone watch it. It's based on a independent comic book, and there you go. Like that rounds out the 31 Days of Dread. So we're publishing late. So look, even following this, you can probably expect Chud and Return of the Dead as like a 1-2 upload, just because those two movies are completely incredible, completely mind-blowing, and for some weird reason, they don't have action figures, which is weird because they have great enough designs that have action figures and other artwork, and they don't have remakes. I love it, kids. I really do. I'm spinning my own head here talking to you. So that's some of your updates here, and I do apologize because we have Terminator coming up, and we have Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker coming up. There is a lot. There's a lot of content coming to you by, I will say even by December, because I'm thinking of doing a dedicated Star Wars run where every single episode will be a Star Wars movie, TV show, TV special. Because there's been, I guess, 3 original, maybe 4. Like if you count Clone Wars, like 4 original Star Wars specials for TV. Going back to the holiday special. So it took me a little bit to see this movie. Now, when I was behind, I was desperate to catch up, and I thought I could just sit down and watch The Sacrament. And I watched the trailer. I'm like, maybe the trailer will jog my memory. Maybe it'll just bring enough back. And it didn't. And then I got a little, I started to freak out. So I waited until I had a window to watch the movie. And I was very happy I did, because I think if I sat down and blindly spoke about this movie, I would be off. I really would, because there's points in this movie that 100% work. Okay? 1,000. And there's other parts of this movie that do not. Okay? Now, look, I might be, I might be a little contradictory there. The parts of this movie that really, really do work is the acting, it's the setup, it's how do we get into the situation, and it is what the situation is once we're there. Okay? Now, in the intro, in our little opening, I said that this is based on a true event. This is based on the Jonestown Massacre. The Jonestown Massacre happened November 18th, 1978. Now, in this movie, I think 146 people commit mass suicide. Spoiler here. Hey, if you're new here, guess what? We talk spoilers. And the true life massacres, like this is somewhat of a definition of how awful the real world is compared to what Hollywood could imagine it as. Okay? 900 people died in the original mass suicide. They call it a massacre. Massacre, mass suicide. It's horrific. So this movie portrays a lot of what is happening as sympathetic, as lost, as sad, and believe it or not, as hopeful. Because the whole point of this movie is you can create a perfect society. You can go out there, okay? You can do it. A lot of people have. But each one, the reason why these stories resonate, okay, is because they don't last for long. They don't. But they're perfect. They're perfect long enough to build entire little city-states. And they control the local economy. They control the local government. They get involved and they start, passing laws and legislation that allow them to build and run roads and run rivers and run electricity and become, somewhat, self-sufficient, but kind of not really at the same time. This is a pattern of these groups. Now, the reason why this is important too, because I wish this was the Jonestown Massacre. I wish that this took place in the 70s, but it takes place modern day, and it's hard for us to grip. There's a little bit of a disconnect there in us gripping this because it's modern day. It's modern day because look, it's quick and it's low budget. Okay, it's hard. It's hard to shoot period movies, and maybe Ty West didn't want to do another 70s throwback movie. Okay, he didn't want to do maybe another period piece like he did with House of the Devil. Again, 100% get that. But we do lose something. Now, this movie is essentially about Vice. And it's awesome that they got Vice involved with this. This guy's looking for his sister. He gets a letter. His sister's at this Shangri-La city on the Shining Hill. And him and the Vice guys go to investigate, and they start to shoot the story about this compound, this commune that she's involved with. And, as soon as they get there, something's up. Now, when I first saw this movie, I didn't know about the Jonestown Massacre. I was thinking based on, like the trailer. If you watch the trailer for this movie, you think there's something weird. You think something supernatural is happening. You think this movie is a lot like Day One, Midsommar. You think it has a horror hook. You think there'll be sacrifices and weird deaths, all that stuff. But no. This is about people's desperation and the hope that they have in the world, and kind of when they're down and out, when you're addicted to drugs, when you have no other recourse, and you want to make your life right, you have this hope. You have a desperate hope. And this movie illustrates that perfectly. What people are willing to do within desperate hope. Now, the disconnection. Because this movie has its fair share of disconnections. It's not long enough. We need more. Same thing with Midsommar. We need more from that movie. We need more about the cult. This movie has an interview sequence. It's like a Vice interview. And Gene Jones plays father. Now, he's based, look, I'm not making this part history lesson. He's based on the guy behind Jonestown. This guy disappears. He disappears. This father character is him. He emerges. I don't know how you don't get an Academy Award nomination. This guy's so good. But they do this interview sequence, which is in the middle of the movie. It's like 40 minutes in, and it's your anchor. It anchors the movie because it gives you all of these explanations, and it leaves enough open. Because this movie has an eerie quality. But what he speaks about during this interview sequence, he's just speaking to the audience. He's explaining it all. And, that's a scene that Midsommar needed, but it doesn't have. And it's masterful. Now, from that point on, we have a couple other characters. We have the brother-sister dynamic, and it's people wanting to leave. It's people having to stay. And then, everyone starts committing suicide. You start drinking the Kool-Aid. And two of our, three guys that get there come out, okay? There is a great death sequence with, I believe, AJ, Sam Turner, and, I'm sorry, it's AJ Bowen, okay, and Amy Summitz. There's a death sequence between the two of them that is one of the best death sequences you're ever going to have. She kills her brother in this scene, and it is horrible to watch. It's so sad. It's so sad watching someone who's confined to a chair. You're tied up, you're injected with something, and you're about to die. It really is. So this movie is a guaranteed watch. Doing the research around this movie about Jonestown is guaranteed. Do it before this movie, do it after. Now, when I first saw this movie, I think it was on Netflix, and Netflix also had the Jonestown documentary. So I was able to do this deep dive. This is one of the things I hate about Netflix, about rotating things off. I mean, that 1-2 combination is golden to be on Netflix, and it's I don't think either one's there because I tried to look. So, really rounding out the 31 Days of Dread. We're doing more just straight up easy identifiable horror. This movie it's a lot like the Joker, the concept and the content within the idea for the movie is horrible, okay? And there's disgusting things that happen, but it's kind of maybe not a horror movie. This maybe could be more of a thriller, but it sticks with you. It kind of echoes in your head when you watch it, but it's still not a perfect movie. A lot of the performances are not there. Some of this is shot in first person, and some of it's not. It can go from scene to scene. Or even shot to shot. It's first person perspective, kind of Blair Witchy, Cloverfieldy, found footagey, and then it's not. And that's where it's a little jarring, but it does have that news aspect. So some of it's explainable, some of it's not. But it's always weird when people talk in the cameras with these. It kind of needs to flow. It needs to have a particular flow. That's why I think Cloverfield works so well, because there's a lot of people in frame at the same time. They're talking. There's very little talking to the camera. Okay, but if that makes any sense. Okay, this movie, the point I'm getting at is this movie has flaws, but it doesn't have enough flaws for you not to see. It doesn't have enough of a message for you not to jump into it. And anyone out there that just wants to see, again, the range of a filmmaker, this is one of the definitions of Ty West. This shows you how good he really is. This shows you how much he needs to keep working, because he will only get better. This was what I was hoping that the Innkeepers would be, but it's not. And this movie is also a definition of what was really happening in the 70s in the self-help movement and EST. And, it kind of goes back to Scientology and Dianetics. That was published in 1950. And 20 years of that rolling into the lexicon, rolling into the culture, selling 100 million copies, some ridiculous number. And a post-hippie era, okay, within the culture that kind of led to self-help, that led to these compounds. So many of these places are existed, and people gave up their entire lives to kind of have somewhat of a communistic or socialistic approach to living, and horrible things happen to them one by one. But look, everyone, go check this out for the 31 Days of Dread, day 23. This is Peter. Let's get ready for some straight up horror with Chud. Day 24 and day 25, Return of the Living Dead. We're doing it 80s environmental horror. You have to love it. Until next time, I love you and rock and roll.